Hey, good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
It's Friday the 15th
It is.
of March.
And we probably look like a very, very poorly animated South Park episode. Right? With the motion lag.
For this guy comes back to South Park.
Well,
it's all about South Park.
I'm just saying. So we apologize for that. We
don't apologize. Well, it is what it is.
That's true. Fair enough. So we are remotely hosted today.
It's good.
Due to some inclement weather conditions that caused some challenges with our infrastructure. But always being a team that never gives up, led by leader Doug Splinter, he has found us alternate location to broadcast from.
And a handful of surfaces and a wireless network that's been damaged by water.
And yes.
Welcome to Minnesota.
So if you've ever seen the movie Armageddon, worst possible scenario known to man. That's all you had to say. Worst possible
we're
scenario.
We're on the air with content and all sorts of stuff.
That's right.
Awesome. And you'll notice here,
we have a guest.
Introduce yourself.
Yep. Hi, I'm Mike Benkovich. I'm a former Microsoft evangelist, and now I'm doing Azure stuff, and I've been doing it for about 10 years. And we're going to dive into some of the governance stuff, I think, a little bit later.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, not only also an MVP,
right?
Yeah. Right? And owner, partner, or how do you describe the
partner in Imagine Technologies?
Partner Imagine Tech. All
right.
Excellent. Principal consultant, architect, cloud guy.
Pretty much do it all.
Right.
Yeah,
all around guru.
All around guru.
Yeah.
That's right. Excellent.
So,
let's cut over to content. And let content be the hero for the
That's
day.
right. That's right.
Because the content is going to stream better. So
absolutely.
Right. So
some good announcements.
Do you want to kind of briefly go over what we're going to talk
about? Brief. So we've got some general. So one is around our gaming capabilities in the platform with PlayFab. It was an acquisition. Just liked it because it's fun. Not necessarily uber important, but then we've got, it is uber important if you're in the gaming industry. So some DR stuff that we've got going on with Managed Disks.
DR stuff.
DR stuff is always good. We've got some Databricks announcements for new capabilities and some cost words going in. And then we've got some Azure blueprints, right? And then we're going to segue to Mr. Benkovich, who's going to actually be giving us an overview of some blueprint stuff.
Shows
and actual, So not to get too deep in the weeds, because that's
not just
words and things, stuff.
Is talk? Don't they say talk is cheap?
It is.
It can.
But that's pretty much all we do.
Fair.
Yeah.
Unless you're from Missouri, then it's a show me.
Show me. Just show me.
Yep.
Absolutely. But that kind of goes with the pictures worth 1,000 words.
Yeah. Wow. Anyway. There's a lot of analogies.
Or is that a
cliche?
I know, cliches. Yeah.
Okay.
I like that better.
License plate.
Yeah.
Land of 10,000 Lakes. Why not?
There you go.
Okay.
Awesome. So GameStack.
Kick us off here with GameStack.
So it was a while ago, but we did acquire a company called PlayFab, and we're really getting heavily invested, obviously, with their Xbox gaming platform and some of the other capabilities. People may have saw the recent announcement with Xbox Live and some of the other platforms.
Yeah, I saw that it was going to be Xbox Live would be available essentially on iOS and Android. Yes. Like the SDK is going to be cross-platform.
You got it, dude.
That's
cool. Really exciting. If you look at the game stack that we're providing, it's really kind of this out-of-the-box, full stack. You've got, obviously, DirectX for your runtime. You've got the Havoc engine,
forever.
Right? Exactly. But then you've got some of these ancillary capabilities. For example, Azure PlayFab, as I mentioned, was an acquisition. You've got the tooling, the Visual Studio, the code, all the tooling that's built into it. But I think the biggest part of this really is the PlayFab components, right? So if you look at the game stack, it's a composite, right? It's a composite of capabilities, just like when we talk about mobile dev, right?
Yep.
We've got this kind of in a box back end stuff. So in this case, you've got matchmaking, which is matching up. Like if you go online and you're trying to do a one-on-one thing, you've got some complex scenarios where you don't want to pin some noob against a guy who's like level 56 like 3 times over. Right? That's a recipe for disaster.
So this PlayFab thing is really some of the.
So these are services
back end, game making bets, things that you don't want to, seriously, play matchmaking. It's very common.
Well, here's another common service, PlayFab Party, right? So voice and data services, right? So a lot of times so what's cool about this is having this as a first party service versus like when I watch my son play, sometimes you have to spin up a chat, a room in a different service, that kind of stuff. This can be actually integrated as a first class citizen into your games instead of having to, have a mic that's attached to a PC that's running a separate service while you're playing a game. You know what I mean? Because sometimes people like to use different chat services and stuff.
And you can see how PlayFab Party would actually work with PlayFab Matchmaking.
Oh, yeah.
Because you would need to talk to matchmaking if you were on the same team.
Yeah.
right? And so it's like it could be a really integrated service about
Absolutely.
You know, both matchmaking, team making, I guess is the other part you could say of matchmaking.
Yep,
you know?
yep. And then you have a couple other capabilities. So PlayFab Insights, which is literally game telemetry and data. That's more beneficial, obviously, as the game developer, right? You want to see telemetry. You want to know, are there issues? Do we need to scale? Or what's going on? That kind of stuff.
Yep.
PubSub, right? So PubSub messaging for client integration, that kind of stuff. And then last but not least is the user generated content, which is really interesting. It's a really interesting challenge when you've got user generated content, right? Because then what you're going to see, or what you will see, is backend integration into like a content moderation service, right? So we're automatically removing offensive content. So all this stuff is basically bundled up in a package for you, which to me, it's like that takes you out of the business of a lot of stuff.
It really does, unless you focus on the game, because matchmaking, for instance, just to get back to the example again, is common across platforms, across game platforms. And so it's like, why invent that yourself when you can just use the service?
Right. And game developers, think about actual game developers. That's not the business they want to be in anyway, right? They're all about collision detection. They're all about lag. They're all about the game itself, right? These are ancillary services that are really important, but it's not the actual game itself. Right?
Yeah.
So this really puts them back in puts the blinders back on and lets them actually focus on the game itself.
Yeah, and then a little bit farther down, we talked a little bit about the sort of Xbox Live SDK available on mobile platforms. I thought that was really cool.
It's very cool,
because this really goes back to the not the old Microsoft. Right?
Oh my gosh, no, we're becoming.
I mean, it's like, look, let's make Xbox Live available everywhere on any platform, on Xbox, not on Xbox.
Streaming games we're becoming the Netflix of gaming.
Yeah, that was like streaming. It was what were they doing? They were playing Forza Horizon on a phone.
Yeah,
I was like.
So really, some really fun stuff.
I think there's some Azure stuff in there, but mostly, it's just cool. Run your game back here. Let's make it about Azure. Run your game back in on Azure
and never have to worry. Well,
that's right. Exactly. How about that?
Yeah, I love it. Love it.
Okay.
All right.
A little DR.
Managed
disks.
Yeah. Little HA, little DR. Throw it all together. What do you got? You got a service that stays up and runs.
HADR.
That's right. So historically, you could actually do. We have DR tools for VMware and physical servers and virtual servers and all kinds of different technologies, right? But it really, the DR solution with ASR, you spun up basically a storage account. You did some other things, right? Well, basically now what we're enabling is managed disks, right? So you don't have to worry about storage. I mean, obviously the underpinnings of the disks, there are storage accounts behind the scenes, and the storage stamps and stuff. But what's cool about this is now you can back up right to managed disk. Right, so you don't have to spin up a storage account. You don't have to do a bunch of these other pieces.
The imports, the exports.
Exactly. Yep. You got it. Copy. Yep. We're going right to managed disk for backups for this is for VMware and for physical servers too.
So I'm going to back up just a step and say, if you've already been using Azure Site Recovery (ASR), if you've already been using ASR, then you've been replicating your disks to the storage account.
Correct.
And now you can replicate directly to managed disk, which is where you want to be.
Yes.
Right. and if you're not using ASR today, it works the way you always wanted it to work.
Exactly.
That's the
net. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's spot on.
Because in managed disks, the reason why you want to be on managed disks is because, number one, in the old way, you had to put your managed disk on a storage account, which meant you had to be concerned with how many disks are on a storage account.
Right. Yes, 40.
That was like a magic number,
right? Do not provision more than 40 Vs.
Right, to be safe, don't do that. And so you had to and if you deleted a VM, guess what happened to your VHD? Right. Nothing. It just sat there on the storage account.
Well, and so there was some interesting challenges with that too, right? Because sometimes you would delete a virtual or you would delete a VM, but it would have a lease that wasn't expired. So you would try and delete the disk, and the lease was there, so you couldn't get rid of the disk, and it was just
not good. Yeah. So. But that's not where we are anymore.
No.
We're talking about managed disks, which means when you create a disk, it creates a disk. It's a first-party item
resource,
first-party resource in Azure, meaning that it can have an RBAC. So Azure RBAC is available.
Right.
And whenever you delete a VM, it knows that it depends on it. All sorts of really good stuff.
All the dependencies kind of flow through, and you don't end up with a bunch of orphan stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally.
The really cool thing that I like about managed disks is because we take care of the spanning and the pinning. right?
You just don't have to worry about all that
was
stuff.
the biggest nightmare when we did storage accounts,
Totally.
because you had to ensure that when you provisioned a storage account that it was actually spanned across multiple stamps, and that the second and third instances were pinned right to certain locations. Otherwise, if a stamp went down in our data, for example, if we were updating or something happened, if the underlying hardware failed, basically you didn't have the guarantee unless you explicitly went out and did your spanning and pinning yourself.
Yeah.
With managed disks, the spanning and pinning is gone.
Which is the way you wanted it. You didn't want to
Exactly.
know about the way our data centers work.
No.
You just wanted to say, I need a disk, and you take care of it.
Way too much information if you have to know about spanning and pinning.
So what this means is if you have VMware or physical hardware in your data center and you want to use Azure Site Recovery into Azure, you can replicate those disks on-prem to manage disks directly in Azure, which is awesome.
Now,
really good news.
So having said that, so the change will not affect existing services. So if you are already using ASR today, it is going to continue to do the backups to the storage account. So you will have to do this kind of cut over, if so to speak, to get this into the
So there's some work to do if you're already using it, but you know, it's funny because I think this is something that people have to kind of realize that is going to happen forever.
Yes.
Is you're going to get involved, you, the customer, if you're getting into the cloud, you're going to get involved and you're going to deploy and you're going to do your stuff. And then 6 months later, a year later, whatever, something else is going to come out that's going to make your architecture out of date.
Absolutely.
And so it's so funny because on-prem, that's what we tried to avoid at all costs. It's like, no, I want to deploy VMware and I don't want to upgrade it or change it for the next, 3 or 4 years. And I put off upgrades and I put off changing it. But like in the cloud, we embrace the change and we say, what new capabilities are available in the cloud today that I can go implement that make my life easier? And so it's like, I want to move forward. So don't think of a change like this as like, well, I already implemented ASR and now you're changing this on me. It's like, no, we're changing this to make this better and easier for you. You didn't have to pay for it. You didn't have to deploy anything. You didn't have to upgrade anything. So the capability is there. Yes, you'll have to go and maybe remediate, but you get something out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
All right.
Absolutely. So Azure Databricks, right? Who doesn't like themselves some Azure Databricks?
I love Databricks, but we should first say what Databricks is.
Okay.
Right.
So Databricks is bricks of data. No, that's not
Legos.
No,
it's the mortar that holds it together.
That's exactly right.
That's yes.
So Databricks, there's a company called Databricks, and we kind of use that company name as a moniker. A little bit like if you're familiar with Cassandra, you might think of Data Stacks. So a Databricks is the company that was founded around the open source project Spark. So the guys and gals, the folks at Berkeley that invented Spark started a company called Databricks. And so they're kind of the company that maintains and updates and controls that open source project. And then they also develop software to make Spark deployment easier. So that's Databricks. A lot easier. And so in Azure, we have made a partnership with the company Databricks to develop a first-party Databricks service that has all the bells and whistles, all the provisioning, all of the auto turn-off, all of the things you want in a big data solution are available as a first-party service in Azure with RBAC, all of that stuff in the Azure portal. So
so not just RBAC though, you've got native integration into Azure Active Directory on the other side as well to control.
And that's what I mean. It's like there's the Azure RBAC and because it's Databricks
and the actual consumer RBAC.
And the Databricks. That's one of the interesting things about Databricks is Databricks has the user RBAC. Like this person is admin, this person is not. This person, we have shared folders so that you can have notebooks that are shared or not shared or whatever. So like none of that stuff comes from Spark. Spark is just a compute platform.
Exactly.
It doesn't do any of those things. Databricks is what adds all that stuff.
So we've got some new capabilities, and we are announcing a cost change. So we're bringing the cost down, we're bringing the capabilities up, right?
That's what we like.
We're skewing it much more in the customers to the customer's advantage, which is always good. So the first thing is GA of Data Engineering Lite. So if you've got a non-critical workload, if you've got something that doesn't require like significant elasticity. And they instead of LITE, they use the word LIGHT, which is interesting. The play on words there, but so you still get the visibility into your workload, but you can do it at a basically a non-critical. It's kind of like a light version of the framework, right? So that's GA now. You've got ML Flow basically. So now you've got managed ML Flow that you can drop right into the solution, where if you want to integrate machine learning. So ML flow specifically, you can incorporate that into this product as well. So this is a preview, right? And then you've got, of course, so ML with Azure Machine Learning and Azure Databricks. So that's not ML flow. ML flow is something, it's different, but so let's just say this is giving you options when it comes to machine learning, which is great, right? Data scientists love options. Every data scientist I think that I've met has their particular suite of tools that they like using.
Yeah,
right?
And I actually had somebody do a little bit of a demo of Azure Machine Learning for a customer of mine. Okay. And it's like Databricks and Azure Machine Learning really complement each other.
Oh, gosh.
So Databricks is like the data engineering, data science workbench, if you will, compute platform. And Azure Machine Learning is like everything else. It's like
tools, everything you can pull into be able to tweak.
What is the word? Yeah.
Amalgamation. That sounds like something you put in your tube.
Totally. Oh, don't get me started on that stuff.
But like you can every time you run an experiment in Databricks, you can basically log that to Azure Machine Learning, which means it logs how it performed, what the hyperparameters were, anyway, so all of the stuff. And so you can actually go back into Azure Machine Learning and say, over the last 5 days, I've been running this thing over and over again and tweaking it. How did it perform? Which one was the best? And then it snapshots your code and you can go back to it. And that's all Azure Machine Learning. It's really complementary.
It's very slick. Totally
so,
agree with that.
Get started today.
Absolutely.
Like, don't wait.
Well, right? Act now.
And we'll double your order. Yes, we will double your order. If you call in the next 30 minutes, we will give you the 20-ounce
2 bricks for
Flex
one.
Seal.
2 bricks for one.
Yeah, 2 bricks for one. I like that.
You just have to pay for shipping and handling.
No, $8.99 for shipping and handling.
That's
You
fair.
get the bonus bricks.
That's right.
So this is the bonus bricks. All right. So this is I'll say last, but definitely not next to last. We never say
kind of
last.
Segue,
right? Yeah, kind of a segue, if you will, into the blueprints piece that
you bring it into skiing,
right? We never say last run. We always say second to last. We're going to skip the last,
right?
Because everybody I've ever talked to that's been injured on the ski slopes has said, "Well,
this is my last run
of the day, and here's what happened." That's the way the story always starts.
We never have a last run. It's always the next last because there's always next year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway. You got it. So Azure Blueprints, right? We've released this capability a while back, and I'm not going to give too much of the secret sauce away because that's what Mike's going to be talking about. But for those of you that use Blueprints, that are following Blueprints, basically we've got this. Basically, there's a compliance standard, the ISO 27001 shared services, which now actually can integrate into the Blueprints piece. So as part of that. The whole component to this is understanding how to stay in compliance, how to mash up all those services, policy, some of the things that that really keep you on the rails, right? Because part of the cloud is, I think it can be misused, it can be abused. It's not the wild, wild west, but it certainly can be. You can let things get out of control.
Well, it's too easy to just when you're going to the cloud to just go out and install, configure, create,
deploy.
And you need guardrails. You need something to say, okay, well, where are we going? When an enterprise is looking at this, it's like we have to have charge back. We have to be able to say we aren't building and creating things that are way outside of the bounds of what we want to allow to do. Locations, you've got compliance, you have all of these different things where you're saying, where are we putting our data? Data sovereignty is a big issue.
Huge.
And in order to pull that back in, this is where the blueprint stuff is. And this is fresh documentation. If you look at the date of this, this stuff is out this week, and it's just some amazing stuff.
No, it really is. And to your point, this isn't about somebody wanting to maintain a tight grip on anything. This comes down to things like ISO 27001. If you've got people that are just kind of deploying stuff out there, how are you ensuring that you're in compliance? How are you ensuring that you're
regulatory?
Right? Exactly.
Like that's a whole different ballgame. It's not. It's not like I don't really like that you're deploying this, or I'm not really sure I'm in agreement with this architecture. It's like, no. This is not. This is regulatory.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about blueprints is it kind of brings together the idea of policy, which has been there for a while. It's the guardrails which let you say, I'm going to enforce this, allow that. I'm going to make sure you're tagging and all of those things that you need to be able to pull it together. But it takes that stuff and adds to it infrastructure, because when you go out and you're building out a large organization that's got different VNets, has express route, has logging, has analytics. A lot of that stuff has to be deployed in a consistent way. When you've got a subscription and I want to inflate another subscription, all that work to go out and do that has been managed by thousands of lines of PowerShell going out to go out and provision this and provision that, and you have to run it in the right order. You have to have the right permissions. The blueprint contains that for you, and it keeps that blueprint inside of Azure. You're not going out and creating external artifacts that you're then going to pull in and try to provision with.
Yeah, which is awesome, which is really cool. So having said that, having done that intro, we're going to turn the we're going to let you drive. We're going to hand this over to you.
Yeah, we're going to
why don't you go ahead and
hand over the car keys.
Yeah, right.
To kind of give you an idea as to what is a blueprint, because when I was looking at this, it was interesting because we've gone out and created all that infrastructure. We created all of that, things to be able to operationalize the cloud and put out these things. And this takes all of that code and it kind of gives us an easier way of doing that.
Yep.
And so, I've got a dashboard over here. This is my Azure environment. I run a lot of stuff here. You might be used to the policy where I can go out and I can say, how compliant am I with things? Yep. It'll give me an overview of where I'm at. I'm at 94% compliance on the policies I put out there. I've got some that I haven't started, but I've started playing around with blueprints. And the cool thing about this is you can go to the blueprints by simply going to policy. There's links there. There's also links from the Quick Start Center that I can use to get into it.
Yeah.
But if you go out to where the blueprints are, and I'm just going to open it up from here, you'll see that there's a way that you can go out and just start working with them.
Yep.
And it's a grouping together of 3 or 4 different things. It is ARM templates that provision consistently, a shape of infrastructure.
Yeah.
It's policies, things like tagging. Maybe I've got a tagging for cost center.
Yeah, that's a
Who's
big
the
one.
owner? When was this created? There's a whole bunch of things you can do with tags to be able to report and make this thing, something that we can look back at. But it's also RBAC. I've got my operations. Some of these compliance things, like the ISO 27001, you have to have different people doing your system versus operations versus design.
Right.
And in order to be able to, separate all that, you have to be smart and go, oh, well, how do I set that up? Well, this now lets us go out and do that.
Absolutely.
So would you say at a high level that Blueprints is a place to put your ARM templates that people can go and deploy, an approved ARM template that complies to whatever, ISO 27001, that's one example, but it could be anything. It could just be an approved architecture for your organization to say, look, you can either go through architecture board if you want to do something new, or we have approved.
We can fast track you.
We can fast track you. We have we have architectures in the blueprint factory.
Yep.
Is it an ARM? Is it an ARM template repository?
It's not really an ARM template repository, and when you're thinking about like the golden template where I've got all of my stuff, this plays into that. But I think that what this is going to be more where I set up the environment where an application team is going to start. They haven't really figured out what all the different things are going to be. And if I've got a complex architecture, I'm not going to put that into a blueprint. I'm going to put that into the templates, and I'll keep that separate.
Okay.
But what this will do is it'll make sure that where I'm deploying it and where I'm working on it, that I'm doing it in the right way.
Okay. All right.
So for instance, if I go out here and you create a new blueprint, you've got a couple of different choices. You can go out and you can create just a blank blueprint, and a blank blueprint has the ability to go out and say, here's my blueprint, and I can specify a location. Now, when you're going to apply a blueprint, it can be at a number of different levels. And
sure, you can put it at somewhere in the hierarchy.
Right. And so Azure Management Groups allows me to go out and say, okay, well, these are my development, these are my demo subscriptions, here's my production. In my environment, I've got demos that I do for conferences and things like that, and then I've got my production work. Well, I've got different blueprints for the two because my production stuff has to be a lot more secure than what I do when I'm doing my dev test, or my demos, when I'm up in front of an audience.
So in other words, if you're using management groups to have all of your dev subscriptions under dev, you could put your blueprints for dev on that management group, making them available in all of those subscriptions. Right. But the production ones would only get the blueprints that are assigned to the production management group.
Exactly.
Okay.
So like here, I've got my demo subscriptions. If I drop down and take a look at the optional pick a subscription, you'll see I've got this, 4 different subscriptions in that. I've got only 2 in my production, right?
Yeah, the up at the top of your managed groups I see now.
Right, and if you look at the tenant group, I could put the blueprint at the very high level, and you can create a blueprint, and what you do is you can create a blueprint and you can version it, and then you can apply it, and then you can assign, and as it iterates over time, as your organization becomes more and more compliant on different things, you apply new versions of it, and it'll go out and it'll allow you to create the infrastructure.
Okay.
But for just a simple blank blueprint, I'm going to put this at the demo level. You just go out and select this, and then you can go into where the artifacts are. And in a blueprint, it's like there are a number of different things you can add. You can add the resource group, policy assignments.
So you can do it. You can do an ARM template if you want, but it's more than that. It's not ARM. This is not an ARM template library.
No,
it's more than that.
No. This is where you have like shared things like networking.
Mhm.
Networking's expensive. It's
Oh, yeah.
also kind of you don't want to delete it. It gets locked.
Yeah.
Things like logging and
Yeah.
analytics. You've got shared services like key vaults, where I want to have a particular set of shared resources that are going to be used by everyone in that subscription.
Yep.
And it might be 5 application teams, it might be 1, it might be 500.
Right.
But the thing is that there's a bunch of shared things that I would apply at this subscription to apply through this, right? And so you can go out and you can create this. And the policies, there's when you go out and do this, you'll see there's 143 policy definitions. You can also create your own custom definitions and pull them in. And all these are JSON definitions that describe what that policy is. Right.
So VMs, for example, can have to have encrypted disks. Right. Or we can only deploy to this location or the SKU size.
I mean, the Azure policy, I mean, I like to think of Azure policy as like one and the same with the ARM API.
Right.
It is controls of the ARM API. So whatever you want to control in the ARM API can be it's the same thing. The ARM API is a REST API, and the policy is controlling that REST API. So it's not like some layover bolt-on. It's the same thing.
Right. And when you go out to provision new things, it runs the validation against the policy before Azure Fabric will go out and actually do it.
That's a beautiful thing is before it gets there, right?
Yeah. Right. Like audit VMs that don't use managed disks. Maybe that's important to you. And you can go through here and you can set up the policies. You can set up your role assignments, the resource manager templates, and getting started with from a blank blueprint. When I first started looking, it was like, wow, it's kind of overwhelming. It's like I want to be, we've got compliance things like the ISO 27001 or the SOX or the was it PII? Those different
PCI,
compliance things.
Absolutely.
What do those things mean? How do you figure that out, right? I mean, you could go over to the security center and you can open it up and it actually shows you your compliance and what those requirements and what those initiatives are. But what the Blueprint team has done in the last week or so is they have really made it easier to get started. So instead of just having the blank blueprint, which is what was there before, they've added a bunch of different
resource group with RBAC.
Right.
Cool, man.
So if you got common
can we have this guy back sometime?
Absolutely.
Come back and show us some more cool stuff.
We'll come back and we'll dive deeper into this.
Yeah.
But yesterday they added the 2701, and I was looking at this. And
this was the thing we talked about.
This is where this blueprint. If you start out and use this as your starting point, and again I have to give it a name. My blueprint. Assign a scope of it to be demos again. This might be my production. So maybe I'll go out and do this against my production. When you go to the artifacts on this is where, there's hundreds of different things that have to be in place for it. So you've got things like log analytics on your Linux machines. You've got...
So there is a resource group, or there is a resource policy. And then there's,
there's a network resource group. It creates it. When you add a resource group, it'll go out and it will actually create that resource group. It'll apply the RBAC policies to it. You can deploy ARM templates into it. So for instance, here there's an Azure Key Vault template. If you click on this, what you can do is you can go out and you can specify what your template looks like. You can either just go out and open up the file. The cool part about this is that after you import the file, it also goes out and figures out what parameters need to be applied to it. So then you can go down and say, okay, well, and there's just like in ARM templates where I can use different calculations and things like that to concatenate and work with it. String functions. You can do the same thing with this.
So then sounds to me like, I mean, right here you're actually taking an ARM you're taking a blueprint template, and you're actually saying, I'm going to take the ISO 27001 blueprint template, change it, do what I want. We've got it pretty much figured out, and then you can actually add that to your blueprint library. That's kind of what you're doing here.
So this is your
customizing. It's a jump start for you could build one on your own. We've already built one that we think is probably 90% of the way there, and you just might need to change it a little bit before you put it in your blueprint library for people to use.
And the thing is this is the start. And what's cool about this is that when you get done, you save the draft.
PCI, HIPAA.
And when you save a draft of a blueprint, the cool part about it is then you can go out and you can version it. Right? And I start out with version.
Somebody else can approve it. It's not published yet. It's like SharePoint.
Right.
Exactly.
So if you go to your blueprint definitions, you can see here I've got a bunch of different blueprints I've been messing around with.
Version 1, draft.
Version 8. This was one
And
that I was building out and iterating on.
Yep.
I'm assuming that you could tell that you deployed that over there with version 1,
Yep.
the blueprint.
And it comes in a draft form, and then when you are ready to publish it, you click on it, you publish it, because you can be drafting it, adding things. You know, you're going back to your security team, you're going back to your network team.
So you're iterating over it.
Iterating with everyone that, you know, plays into the governance of the subscription.
Right.
And you're able then to apply it. And then you can go out and you say, okay, well, I'm going to take this one, and we're going to take the Benko blueprint, and I'm going to assign it.
Dude, you could actually go back and be like, okay, we updated the blueprint. Who do we need to remediate?
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So if I go back here to my blueprint definitions, I created an ISO.
Wow.
I created the ISO 2701. If I assign this, it'll go out. What subscription do I want to, you know, apply this to? And it's going to filter it down to the ones that's in that management group.
Yep.
So this one I put into my demos, and I can go out and say, here's my my MVP subscription. I can scroll down, and then I've got a spot where I can put in the parameters, organization name. Well, the resource group names get named according to that.
Right.
So it follows my naming standards.
Yep.
It's got my RBAC. It's got my guardrails. It's got everything.
Yeah.
Pretty cool
awesome.
stuff.
It's very cool stuff.
Very cool. I'm into this.
I know, right?
I like it.
I
don't know why I geek out and nerd out about governance, but I think it's so important because if you put up the guardrails, people can get going.
Exactly.
Yeah, and like I said, the goal isn't just to be a stick in the mud and no. The goal is to keep in compliance, to keep in, you know, it's not to make people's lives, it actually makes your life easier.
It's to accelerate the adoption, because, you know, the trouble with, you know, all this change in technology is it's like you have to learn all of these different things.
Right.
This is making it easier to pull these things and these concepts in, which, you know, I'm afraid of what it's going to look like in 3 years from now. But I mean, this stuff is evolving every day. And right now they've just added the 2701. I would expect to see more blueprints to come along.
Absolutely.
And, you know, you can get them from the community. There's GitHub. A lot of this is open source.
You'll see everything. CIS. I'm sure you're going to see all kinds of different blueprints. Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
So we are up against our time, a lot of time slots. So Mike, if people wanted to follow you on Twitter, if they wanted to, if they had a follow-up question, how can they get a hold of you?
So there's a couple ways. One is I'm on Twitter as mbenko, like Mike Bankovich, but mbenko is my Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn. Go out to LinkedIn Learning. You can search on anything Azure. You'll find my Azure Dev Tips course. I've got a tip of the week where each week we drop out a new video that is you know, something to go out and learn.
Awesome.
I've also got courses on LinkedIn Learning for Azure governance and how to use the different consulting, different services. But you can also IM me, connect through LinkedIn. You know, say, hey, I want to, you know, connect with you, and then send me messages, and I'll be happy to reply.
Excellent.
So hopefully that works.
Absolutely.
So
no, that's great.
Check it out.
Rick, how can people find you?
Yep, you can reach us on our standard Twitter handle at Azure Flash News. Of course, I can be reached at Rick, WEY, at Microsoft.com. Or my personal Twitter handle is Code Border, all one word, obviously. And you?
And you can find me at mgarner on Twitter if you want. That's fine. Or you can email me, mgarner@microsoft.com. So please reach out. Follow Azure Flash News on Twitter. Catch us on YouTube. For those of you who are listening, if you want to catch this on YouTube, you'll be able to see all the demos. So go catch us there. We actually have we have quite a few subscribers on YouTube. So thanks for those of you doing that. You can also catch us on iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play. So please feel free to catch us there if you're catching us on the line. So
we'll meet you where you want to be met.
That's right. Let us know if there's a place that you're not seeing us.
Yeah, good point. Great point. Absolutely.
One thing I wanted to push is that April 2nd is the launch of Visual Studio 2019. And this will be, I think, the 9th product that I'll help launch. And it's going to be at the Edina MTC. We're going to have a launch viewing party. Starts at 10 o'clock. Doors open at 9. Excellent. We'll be providing some lunch. It'll be a lot of fun. Go out to my site, benkotips.com, and I've got a link on here for the launch viewing party.
There it is right there.
It's bit.ly VS19MSP. Go out and click on that. That'll take you right to where you can register and join us.
Awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
Come hang out.
Yeah, right on. Very good.
Nerd out on Visual Studio 2019.
Amen. I love it.
All right.
Yep. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in at this time. And we greatly appreciate it. We always look forward to having this conversation. So we look forward to chatting with you, hopefully same time, same place next week. Right?
I think next week's going to be okay. The week after that is spring break. So
that's right.
I'm not sure what we're going to do that.
We'll try and get cameras back for next week.
Rock on.
Content this weekend because we're still
good.
under construction next week. So.
Yeah. Very good. Well, until then, keep your fingers on the keyboards and your head in the clouds.
We can do it.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.